This is the Heroic Voice, where I talk to comic book creators, people I've worked with, other interesting people about the history of comics, superheroes, and the current state of the comic book industry. I also discuss current and upcoming projects, current events, and any other topics my guests might be interested in talking about. So subscribe and hit the like button. Help me grow this channel and promote indie comic book creators, publishers, and other people affiliated with the comic book industry. Your comments are appreciated. Get to it and leave feedback, good, bad, and otherwise. I am your host, Dennis Maloney, writer, publisher of the Heroic Multiverse, where we spotlight good girls, bad girls, super babes, and superheroics in a classic, kind of golden agey style. Grab some snacks and enjoy. This is the Heroic Voice. Hey, welcome to the Heroic Voice. I'm here this evening. I think this is January 5th. We're doubling up this week. We had one on Saturday. We're having another on Sunday with my friend Brad Rader and his co-creator on a shadow called Danger, Mike Wellman. Um, and as long as I have already mentioned the project, why don't one of you take over and tell our guests, our people who are watching this, what A Shadow Called Danger is all about?
Well, why don't you take over on that, Mike?
Oh shoot, Brad, you do it better than me. But
Well, you're
okay. It's
co-writers. You could like be co-talkers, and then nobody
Oh,
can
okay, well,
understand a
all
word you
right.
say.
Well, the elevator pitch tagline is it takes place in the present day alternate universe where Trump's attempted coup back in January 2021 succeeded. So now Trump would be entering his third term, but that's okay because he got to rewrite the rules. It's a heavily political strip, but it started out as an idea that Mike and I had, like, in the early aughts, to do a serialized comic strip with the same character where the George W. Bush administration had became permanently entrenched, and so it would probably be taking place right about now in the near future,
Mhm.
where this character, we don't really have a name for him. We call him Shadow, but that's copyright infringement. So
Well,
um,
he's not the Shadow.
he's not the Shadow. He's just
Yeah, he's
Shadow.
this. Yeah.
But nobody's ever referred to him by name yet, except for his civilian name, which is Lance Callahan. And my late husband's name was John Callahan, so Mike did that as a you know
Homage.
homage to my
If
late
you,
husband.
That's nice.
well, your late husband was like a he was a in the 80s. He was like a hip hop rap. Well, no, not hip. Probably
Well,
more of
no,
a
he was
rap
the first.
activist,
He started the first
gay rap
gay
band.
rap group possibly in the world, but one of the first rap groups in LA because he'd moved from the East Coast in 1980, where he was
Hmm.
a fan of rap. He'd been a fan of disco back in the 70s. So he started a rap group called Age of Consent that they actually wrote up in the LA Times around 1982 or 83. And we're getting off
Hmm.
on John. God
Yeah.
bless his
Sorry.
soul. He's dead
Yeah.
now for 10 years. Um, but that's, where the name Lance, anyway, yep.
Well, you
I,
do
I
know
I
that
have a little bit.
the shadow is almost public domain. It's only a couple of years away.
Yeah, this is very different from the Lamont Cranston Shadow. Although I'm a big fan of that. This would be, if anybody were to sue us, it would probably be the creators of Diabolic,
Hmm.
the Gisani sisters from Italy. Uh, but this character, I think, a lot of nations all over the world have a character like Shadow called Danger. They have, anywhere for like in England, you have V for Vendetta. You've got in Italy, you've got Diabolic. French has Fantomas. I mean, dating back to Old English Robin Hood, where you have this character who is, where the readers are rooting for him, even when he's doing, horrible criminal things, we still are rooting for him. But we find ourselves now rooting for him in modern day Trump America. Almost,
Okay. Well, I'm not going to challenge you on any of your assumptions because that's basically the premise of your series. So,
yeah,
yeah. Um, so what we've got then is, by whatever name it's called, we've got an overarching government agency run by a powerful, what, almost, well, maybe dictator type of figure. And this rebel rises
dictatoress,
up against him in opposition. That's basically the
mhm,
premise. An old, tried and true
pretty
story.
much. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also, it
It's
has like sort of a flash of Casablanca in there because Lance starts out as being like totally cynical and totally in it for himself, and then through a confluence of events, sort of gets drawn into caring about people other than themselves and trying to do good because it's the right thing to do.
Ah,
And that's sort of we're in the middle of that process now.
okay.
And I love that about Brad because these are things maybe I'm subconsciously writing, but I don't sometimes realize it until he says it out loud. Like, oh yeah, he is kind of developing a conscience, and the character arc is important, right?
It is.
So
You take
yeah.
somebody who is cynical, and that's the story arc that you see in Casablanca across all different things. Someone
Mm-hmm.
who's cynical in it for trying to be a hero, and he does it so well that he eventually becomes a hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he hasn't been doing it real well so far. He just got his ass majorly kicked in the last couple of episodes.
Yeah.
In fact, we were having a discussion last night about whether or not we should retire his like facial scarring and bruises from that he got 3 episodes because it's been 3 weeks and people forget. Because I drew him in this current episode that I'm trying to finish off, even as we speak, um, with a big shiner and a, you know, cut lip, and basically the left side of his face is kind of mashed in.
Let's backtrack
Kind
for
of
a
looks like
second.
the end of a Rocky movie, you
Right.
know.
Assuming this generates some interest, how do people follow this story? Is it basically a web comic? Are you going to be collecting them if it's a web comic? How does it work?
Go ahead, Mike.
It's on our Facebook page. Well, we have a Shadow Called Danger Facebook page. We realize not everybody's on Facebook. So it's on also Instagram, but we don't have a dedicated page for it yet. We're up to strip number 31 right now, is what I'm writing next. And
No, we're trying to. I'm trying to finish the artwork for page 31. You're supposed to be
okay,
writing page
32
32.
then. Okay, so I'm assuming when we get to around 64 or 80, something like that, we'll collect it in print. I'm a big fan of being able to hold it in my hand and sell things. Um, but currently it's a weekly strip every Monday morning on our personal Facebook pages, and then when time permits, we funnel them over to the Shadow Called Danger page, and and on Instagram as well. So I'm Atomic Basement One on Instagram. Brad is artistic Rader,
I'm
right?
artistic Rader. Yeah, artistic Rader on Instagram.
So
Right. So people can
people who are
follow us.
interested can see it on Instagram, on
Yeah,
Facebook. You want to give your Facebook tags too, or
it's just our names, Mike
oh,
Wellman and Brad Rader, and then a shadow called Danger.
Well,
So
I
it's
actually
almost kind of like you
my
have to
my
know
my my
us.
Facebook name is Bradley, Bradley, C as in Charles, and then Rader, Rader.
Yeah.
okay,
So
alrighty,
you go to that,
and
and you
we're
should be able
31
to
episodes
find.
in. Okay, it's a classic premise. And I have, I'm going to have to take the time to take a look at it, see how you guys are doing. Um,
Yeah, we enjoy it.
yeah, and I encourage
Well,
other people to do the same.
well, I joined your I subscribed to your YouTube channel
Oh, thank
and
you, thank you.
watched it. I watched the interview with Nat Gertler because we're friends on from CAPS,
Yeah.
and I actually really enjoyed that and gave me a lot of ideas about independently publishing.
Yeah, I love Nat.
Yeah,
Nat has some expertise in that area, and that's worth
yeah,
looking at for people who are
Yeah,
interested in self-publishing. It's still up there. All of their interviews are on the Heroic Voice YouTube channel, and this one will be there um,
cool.
in a week or so after we give you guys a chance to review it before we take it live.
okay.
Now, Dennis, I know you're a bit of a comic historian as well. So
A bit of
when you
one.
get a bit of one, so when you get time to read it, I just want to point out to you specifically, to the audience that is you. We're playing with a lot of things. Brad is an amazing artist who has, well, we all know Brad worked on Batman the animated series, but he's got a utility belt full of tricks.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, we when I write a script, I of course I have Brad's art in mind, but I know that he channels artists such as Tom Tomorrow from This Modern World for this strip in particular. Shaky Kane. We're doing some Jim Steranko riffs. There's a lot of. I think you'll see when you read it. There's a lot of riffage on stuff that from the history of comics, and it's a delight for me as a writer to throw this stuff at Brad. And I don't even have to, like in the last page. I remember I said they landed in the Steranko esque, like a Shield headquarters scene, and I know Brad knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I even pull on some of his storyboarding chops that I think a lot of comic artists who've never worked in animation don't have these powers, really superpowers that Brad has.
Well, we've talked about this in some of our interviews about the difference between comic book artistry and storyboard artistry. It's similar, but the techniques are very different. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then the things that you learn from storyboarding, Tim Burgard has told me this, Aaron Sowd has told me this, really help you when you go back into the comics for the flow of the story. I mean,
Well,
because that's what you're doing
I,
with
Yeah.
the storyboard, right? You're showing how the story will flow.
yes and
It
no. I mean,
moves.
I took over the Catwoman comic book from Darwin Cook. He did the first four issues, and I took over with issue five. And it was a revelation to me when I was because I needed to stage sequences in Catwoman's apartment. And
Hmm.
so I was looking at Darwin Cook's redesign and with the intention of doing a floor map, you know, where I could like place the camera sort of virtually within the map, to get my angles. And he was contradicting himself all over the place. He from one shot to the next, he was using a different layout. And it was driving me crazy, but it was also a revelation because I hadn't noticed that when I'd read it the first time. When I was reading it the first time, I was just skimming along going, cool stuff. I'm glad I'm taking over with Darwin. He's great, Because a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
I've taken over comic series from artists that I was looking at going, God, why do they hire me if they use stuff like this? Ugh. Um, but not with Darwin. With Darwin is like, God, this is so cool. I mean, talking about riffs, I mean, he was like riffing off of Bernie Krigstein from like, Master Race
My
and
goodness.
some of his stuff. I mean, it's just like, whoa, cool, because it freed me. Okay, so anyway, the point was, um, I don't have to be when I'm storyboarding for a film, I have to be cognizant of the layout of the space in a way that I do not when I'm having to do comics. I can just flip stuff all over the place. I mean, Neil Adams is doing it. You think of him as a
Mm-hmm.
cinematic storyteller, but he was breaking, I mean, he was like flopping screen direction. Basically, his goal was to get a cool looking page. And that was Darwin's goal too.
Hmm.
The point is a
I'm glad.
cool,
Oh,
what?
I was gonna say I'm glad to hear you say this, Brad, because I like in those scenes in Mar-a-Lago when you got hung up on that room. Remember
Right. Yeah.
having to draw that room? I'll say, hey, remember when we did that interview and you said this?
Well, I remember it too. You know, everything I'm telling you, I was telling myself when I was beating that head against the wall. I mean, we had like a four week sequence set in Mar-a-Lago, and in one of Trump's main like rooms where he did all his business. You know, they have all kinds of photos of it on the web. It's horrendous. It's god
All
awful,
ornate.
full of ornate bric-a-brac. There's no surface that doesn't have tons of tchotchkes on it. No square inch of wall that doesn't have loads and loads and loads of crap. And I was like, you know, killing myself trying to draw it. And Mike was saying, well, just don't draw it. Just, leave it blank. I was like, I can't do that. The whole point is, how Trump has like absolutely no taste. He's like he's awful. Anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, you're right. I need to. Well, I did that with our current episode. I didn't. I left three panels with 3 out of 5 panels had blank background.
Okay.
I didn't put anything in them because I got to make tonight's deadline. And anyway,
You don't need to
I
either.
like
Once
to
you've shown stuff, I mean, you can just, gloss
you
over
know
it.
it's there.
right.
Yeah.
I try to be like a merciful writer when I write. I try to write something that is exciting for the reader, but also for the exciting for the artist to draw. And so like I'll keep certain things in mind that whatever us writers, any writer who's listening right now, please understand whatever we write, that part is kind of easy. Then somebody's got to draw it, and I want to make sure part of my job is to make sure Brad's still excited next week to draw the next page. And I try to, I'll do a certain amount of emotional close up shots of a face and certain like money shot scenes when that blade thing that the shadow scoots on down the wall with. Shit doesn't make sense, but I know it'd look cool, and I knew Brad would make it look cool, and if as long as it looks cool and is cool, then the reader doesn't think about it too much. I don't think.
All right.
Um, so yeah.
Let's talk about how the two of you got together for this project. What was the genesis of A Shadow Called Danger?
Well, we met. I think it was in 2003 when I was working on an animated cartoon series called Stripperella, and one of my co-storyboard artists was Rafael Navarro,
Wasn't that a
who,
Stan Lee creation, Stripperella?
yes, it was, well,
Mhm.
it's Stanley co-creation. There's a lot of story about that.
Ah,
Actually, it was created by Pamela Anderson, and to get it sold, she brought it to Stan Lee, who put his name on it and took
I see.
co-created credit. Um, um,
I interrupted
and
your train of
so
thought.
Raphael.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
so Raphael
Raphael
was
brought
one
me
of
into
the.
the studio.
Yeah, he brought me in. I remember they were like signing posters for a Michael Michael Chabon Steranko um, group signing or something like that. And well, I don't know. Around that time, anyway, um, that's how I met Mike. And then later, Mike and Josh Dysart wanted to do an anti-George Bush comic book in time for the 2004 elections. And so Mike called me out of the blue and hit me up to be the artist on it. I mean, we had like 2 months to go. And so I was going, yeek. I mean, why don't you get Raph to do it since you're buds with him? And I said, no. If Raph was the artist, might not get done in time. So
And
I
Raph steers away from politics too.
Well, I basically, this was good for me because I sort of like I am now. I mean, doing the strip forces me to pay more attention to the news. When I was doing the George Bush comic book, I had to actually. That's when I learned who like Dick Cheney and Karl Rove and all those people were because I didn't actually know. I hadn't been paying attention other than to be disgusted. Um, and so that was a political education, and that was. Um, a political education I mean, basically, I had to turn down a month's worth of work to do that job because there was no time to do anything else. And and then we put it out, and I mean that was really interesting getting people's response. And
We got a good push on that promotion wise. We did a lot of events. Remember we did the things with the rock bands and everything
right.
playing
Well, I remember we
and
did like at like an outdoor fair at the
yeah,
we were signing at the Golden Apple booth, and Bob Leibowitz, I forget his Bill
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 Leibowitz
Leibowitz put us with a guy who was some kind
is
of
he put out that Bill
right-wing
Clinton in prison
nutcase.
book.
What?
He put out that book about Bill Clinton needs to be locked up.
Right. And
Melrose Larry Green from Howard Stern show.
right. And he was like my first he was my introduction to people who don't play fair in terms of, I mean, because every time we had somebody to come by our stuff, look at our stuff, he'd be like, you know, trying to
trying to
cock block
steal
our
the customer.
sale, basically.
Yeah.
Uh,
I almost got
anyway,
into
so
a
that was
physical
very
fight.
interesting.
You remember I
Yep.
almost got into a fight with him?
Well, I was good. I was like, and he'd go, "Well, don't you believe in freedom of speech?" And so after a while, it's sort of like I back off, but then he keep doing his working his number. I mean, it was like really awful. Just awful being around him. That was very
It's a fun
interesting.
memory.
Fond memory, yeah.
Fun. I don't know about fond, but
Well, and then like a week later, we were doing a signing at the Golden Apple store, and I thought Melrose, what's his name, was going to show up there, and we're going to do a repeat of the same thing. So I decided my way of coping with that his BS was just anytime he said a word, I'd yell in his face as loud as I could, "Shut up!" And he said, "Why don't you
I
believe in freedom of speech?" I go, "Shut up!" And let him like let him freak out. And but it never happened. He didn't show up, so
yeah, he didn't
I would have to
come.
test it out.
I'm not to advocate for violence, but I'm not afraid to. If somebody is overly bullish, I'm not afraid to, you know,
Challenge him.
something,
Or
yeah,
her.
Yeah.
like that. Not
Okay.
her. No, I wouldn't hit a girl. I would hit a guy.
So
Okay.
this George Bush comic book, is that still in print? Is that still available?
No, it's 2003. But from that, I don't know how it all came about, but Brad got hired to do a strip in a Long Beach. I forget what the magazine was, but it was a gay magazine in Long Beach, and he had asked me if I had any ideas to work collaborate with him, and that was the first iteration of a shadow called Danger. And so the first 7 or 8 pages were published in 2003,
Six.
2004, 2006 in this magazine. We got canceled for not being gay enough. Uh, and then a month later, the whole magazine went belly up. Anyway, so it's fine. Uh, but and then the project sat in a drawer for a long time,
So
like 15
that
years.
that's the genesis then, way
That's
back
the
in
That's
genesis.
it.
2006. Yeah.
That's the genesis. Sorry. There it
Yeah.
is.
Hmm.
And back in January of this year, I was working on working on one of my side projects, which is I'm doing a complete illustrated Dante's Divine Comedy. And I was working on that, going, well, if Trump wins, what's the point of doing any of this? I need to do something political about that. And then I thought about Shadow Called Danger, which was anti-Bush taking place in some, you know, hypothetical near future dystopia. And I was saying, well, why not dust off Shadow Called Danger and set it now, like right now, um, and make it a present dystopia? Only the dystopia is Trump's attempted coup in 2021 actually succeeded.
An alternate reality story.
Well,
Hmm.
yeah, but of course, like since the election, it's no longer an alternate universe. Um,
Yeah.
so
You
that
kind of
it's just like,
dusted me off too. You didn't just dust off the project. You kind of dusted me off. I was in rehab when we started this project.
So Brad wasn't keeping you in like a chest of drawers somewhere and this pulled you out when he needed you.
That's what
well,
he
that's a
should
whole
have. Or
nother
yeah,
story.
that's another story. But it's right now this is my main project that I'm working on is with Brad, and it's the the frequency of every week. Like we had done about 12
12 pages.
pages way
Mhm.
back when. And we hadn't luckily tapped too much into the whole Bush Cheney aspect of it. So you kind of see glimpses of it, but not really. So when it came time to modernize it, we had about 6 months to really get ahead of ourselves. And me being the procrastinator I am, I'm glad we didn't because now we're kind of running concurrent with the times that we're living in. And I'm writing now a week ahead and kind of reacting to what's going on in the world and what I think is going to go on pretty soon. So for instance, like the next chunk of storyline is going to deal with uh January 21st mass deportations and things like that are very going to be very topical. And our character and some of his cohorts are now in Broward County. Do you know where the Broward Transitional Center is, Dennis? Have you heard of that?
No,
Okay, well, read the strip.
I
You'll learn.
will.
It's in
And I
Florida.
encourage, I mean, there's so much I could have put in information, real world, horrible information that I could have put in there. And I really pulled it back as much as I could to like a 1 page little chunk of, okay, we're going to break from the story for a moment. This is Broward County. This is what they do. I mean, they literally set up, and this is something, you go to comic conventions?
Not these days. It's not worth my
Okay,
time
well,
anymore.
and you're also a white guy, but imagine you're a brown person trying to go to a comic convention, right? And there's a checkpoint in the convention looking for citizenship, like proof of citizenship. And if you don't have it, then you get put aside to a holding facility. And then if you still can't prove your citizenship, you get sent to Broward County. So there was a lady that we talk about in the strip. She was going. It wasn't a comic convention, but it was a cosmetics convention at the Tampa
Fort
or Fort
Lauderdale.
Lauderdale Convention Center. Literally, her parents had just passed, or her dad that she was taking care of had just passed away, and she was in her 50s and was into cosmetics and was going to this convention and was apprehended and taken to this facility. I don't know if she's still there. She might still be there. I don't know, but it's just these stories that things that we do uh, day to day, taking for granted, and just the wildest, craziest shit can just upend your life. And so we touch on that in the comic book that we're
Okay.
doing. Not to
Sounds
get
like
too
something
heavy.
that should be discussed. Um, we are getting close to our usual half-hour mark. Um,
Yeah,
let's give people again, it sounds like you've been maintaining that weekly schedule now for several months, and you seem to be confident that you can maintain it going forward.
yeah.
Mike is,
Nope.
I'm not.
Well, he has
Each
confidence in
week,
you, Brad.
each week around midnight Sunday, I'm going, I can't do this anymore. No.
Well, if you happen to skip a week at some point, people I think will be understanding.
Yeah.
So let's point them to it one more time. It's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, on its own page, on your pages, and we hope soon to be collected into a volume once there are enough pages. So
Well,
let's go through that one more time for people who weren't paying attention.
okay.
It's at a
Well,
shadow called Danger.
go ahead.
Facebook, Facebook, a shadow called Danger, and then it's on our personal pages, Bradley C. Rader on Facebook and Artistic Rader on Instagram. And my personal page is Mike Wellman on Facebook and Atomic Basement One on Instagram.
Excellent. All right. I am looking forward to reading that. My apologies for not being able. I'm so strapped for time these days.
We understand.
Yeah. But I will make a point of doing that sometime next week, and I will give you some feedback on it once I do.
All
Absolutely.
right.
Alrighty. Again,
Even if
thank
you
you.
don't like it, let us know.
Ah, well, I don't know. Your politics are very different from mine, but I
That's
love a good
okay.
story. I love a good story, regardless of the viewpoint that it's coming from, because you learn things from that. You should always
Yeah,
seek out perspectives, interests that are other than yours, because you're bound to learn something from it, even if you don't necessarily
absolutely.
agree with it. Read it. be
And
open.
how boring is it to preach to the choir? Like if you know, if you can get something, I think that even if your politics are very different, you might find it entertaining. You know, I mean, Jim Steranko's politics are very different from mine, but I still love his work.
Absolutely.
Mel
That's
Gibson, you
that's the
know,
whole point. I mean, I
yeah.
love Brad, right? His politics are very different from mine. That doesn't mean that we can't be friends, for heaven's sake. That's
Hmm.
yeah. So let me encourage people to go to those places, read that strip, encourage Mike and Brad to continue with it. Also, like this channel, subscribe to this channel, and share this interview because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who may not know about this, who don't know about this, who would definitely be interested in reading it. So, any
Thank you.
last words from either of you guys?
Um,
Okay.
no, no, not really.
Okay, then let's call it
So,
a
Brad, I got some last words.
go.
Sunday night, um, it's the night I do my laundry for those who need to know this, and then it's the night that I write the next installment of Shadow called Danger. So, what I do, my ritual on Sunday is I look at because Brad pretty much has the artwork done for what's coming out Monday. It's mostly done, and I kind of look at it and I digest it, and then I write the next installment. I kind of have an idea what it is weeks, months ahead of time, but I really lock it in. So that's what I'm doing tonight after this interview.
Okay, great. Let's call it a night then. Thank you both again for being here. I'm looking forward to reading that. I really am. So anyway,
Cool.
good night.
Okay, well,
Dig
thank
it.
you.